Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. This time we're going to be taking a look at a YouTube video from a few years back called Blinda tus finanzas personales así en 2020. Tips de inversión y promoción. And that's from the channel El Lago de los Equinoccios. Even though this video is from a few years ago, it's still got some really good advice in there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially about navigating choppy economic waters, which
Yeah.
seems like we're always in, right?
Yeah, seems like it. And it's funny how they start the video talking about the interest rate drop back in 2020 at Banco de Mexico. They were trying to stimulate the economy, make borrowing cheaper so people would spend and invest more.
Yeah, jumpstart things. I bet there are some downsides to that, though, huh?
Well, for sure. Like, lower interest rates are great if you're borrowing money. But on the flip side, your savings and investments
Yeah.
not going to grow as fast, so it's this balancing act. What I find so interesting, though, is how something like this from a few years ago can still teach us something today. It
Yeah.
reminds us to pay attention to interest rates and how changes to those rates might mess with our financial goals.
So anybody listening, think about your own situation.
Sure.
Are you getting the most out of your savings? Could you maybe refinance a loan to take advantage of lower rates? It's definitely worth looking into. Now, one thing the video really hammers home is the need for an emergency fund. This seems especially important nowadays.
Absolutely. Think of it like your safety net. If something unexpected happens,
Right.
like losing your job, medical bills, car breaks down, your emergency fund is there to soften the blow, keeps you from going into debt.
Exactly. Okay, so let's dig into this. The video gives us 4 ways to figure out how much we should be putting away in this emergency fund. The first way is all about those fixed expenses, right?
That's it. You want to look at those essential costs.
Yeah.
The ones that don't really change month to month, like your rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, any debt payments you have.
Yep.
You basically want to have enough saved to cover at least 6 months of these costs. So let's say your fixed expenses come out to, 15,000 pesos a month. You'd be aiming for an emergency fund of 90,000 pesos.
Okay, so total fixed monthly expenses times 6. That gives you a good starting point for your emergency fund. Now, the second method takes things a step further by including variable expenses.
Right. So these are the costs that kind of go up and down each month. Things like eating out,
Okay.
entertainment, travel, or, those impulse buys. You just got to factor those in.
Okay.
Add them to your fixed expenses. Let's say you usually spend around 5,000 pesos a month on those variable expenses. You'd add that to your emergency fund calculation, bringing it to a total of 120,000 pesos.
So that's 90,000 for the fixed expenses, plus 30,000 for 6 months of variable expenses.
Got it.
So that adds a bit more cushion to your emergency fund. What I find interesting is that the third method actually brings insurance into the mix.
Yes. It shows how insurance can be another layer of protection. We'll talk more about medical insurance later.
Yeah.
But for now, just think about any insurance deductibles you might have. So that's the money you have to pay up front before your insurance kicks in. Add those deductibles to your emergency fund calculation.
Right, just in case.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a 10,000 peso deductible for car insurance and another 5,000 for home insurance. You'd factor those amounts into your total. Now, the fourth method is all about adding an extra layer of comfort to your emergency fund.
Exactly. It's all about tailoring your emergency fund to your specific situation. How secure you feel in your job, your overall financial situation. Instead of just shooting for 6 months worth of expenses, you might go for 7, 8, even 9 months worth.
Right, like if you have a family to support or your income isn't very predictable, you might want a bigger cushion.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So it's all about finding what feels right for you. Okay, so we've covered how much to save, but I'm wondering, where should people keep this emergency fund?
That's a great question. They actually debunk a common myth in the video about hiding cash under your mattress.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is inflation eats away at the value of your money.
Right, it loses its purchasing power.
Exactly. So what you really need is liquidity, the ability to get to your money quickly when an emergency pops up.
So no stuffing cash in the sock drawer. What does the video recommend instead?
They suggest a couple of options. CETES Directo, specifically the Bondia Fund, and then highly liquid bank accounts. Now, for those who don't know, CETES Directo is basically a platform run by the Mexican government where you can invest in low-risk government bonds.
Okay.
The Bondia Fund is great for emergency funds. because it offers daily liquidity.
So you can access your money anytime.
Exactly.
And what about bank accounts?
Yeah, you can definitely keep your emergency fund there, especially if it offers high liquidity, and you can access your funds immediately. The downside is that the interest rates might be lower than some other investment options. But remember, with your emergency fund, the priority is safety and accessibility, not necessarily making a ton of money.
That makes sense. It's about finding that balance between security and growth. Now, I'm really interested in what they say about medical insurance. Gastos médicos. This is something people often overlook, especially when they're young and healthy.
Yeah, it's this common misconception that you only need medical insurance if you're older or already have health problems. But the truth is, a medical emergency can happen to anyone at any time. And the costs, they can be outrageous, even for minor stuff. We're talking tens, even hundreds of thousands of pesos.
So this is about more than just health. It's about protecting yourself financially.
Exactly. Without medical insurance, people often end up draining their savings, selling their stuff, even going into debt just to cover medical expenses. It can totally wreck your financial plans. What's fascinating is that medical insurance acts as a shield, protecting your other financial goals.
Right, so it gives you peace of mind,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you won't be financially ruined if
Yeah.
something unexpected happens. Now, the video does address a common concern about medical insurance.
Yeah.
The cost.
Right. A lot of people think medical insurance has to be super expensive. But the video challenges that assumption. They say there are affordable options out there, starting from just a few hundred pesos per month. It's really an investment in your well-being.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this fits into the bigger picture of financial planning.
Mm.
But let's be honest, even a few hundred pesos a month can be a lot for some people.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who's unsure if they can really afford medical insurance?
I'd ask them to consider the potential cost of not having it. Imagine dealing with a medical emergency and getting slapped with a bill for, let's say, 50,000 pesos. That could wipe out your entire emergency fund, or even force you into debt. Suddenly, those few hundred pesos a month start to look pretty reasonable.
That's a really good point. It's easy to focus on that upfront cost, but we also need to think about those potential financial risks we're exposed to without that safety net. The video also tackles another common concern, especially these days. Does medical insurance actually cover these kinds of events?
Right. There's been a lot of uncertainty around that. The video says that most of the big insurance companies in Mexico, they do provide coverage for these types of events, according to the Asociación Mexicana de Instituciones de Seguros. But it's super important to check the specifics of your policy. Those letras chiquitas, the fine print. Coverage can be different everywhere, so you don't want to just assume anything.
So always talk to your insurance provider and make sure you understand what's covered and what's not. Now, what about the benefits of medical insurance? What does it usually cover?
Well, it usually covers a bunch of things: consultations with doctors, surgeries, hospital stays, medications, lab tests, ambulance services, even some specialized treatments and therapies.
Okay, so it's pretty comprehensive,
Mm,
but I'm guessing there are some things that aren't usually covered, right?
definitely. Things like cosmetic procedures. Unless they're medically necessary, routine checkups and dental care are often not included either, although some plans might offer partial coverage. You really have to read the fine print to understand those limitations and exclusions.
Right, make sure you're clear on what's included and what you might need to budget for separately. Now, the video doesn't just explain the basics of medical insurance. It actually gives some really good advice on how to pick the right plan and just navigate the whole insurance world.
One of the key takeaways is finding a good insurance advisor. They can be your guide through the often confusing world of medical insurance.
Right, because it can be really confusing.
You can be, yeah. They can help you figure out the different types of plans, explain all that jargon, and find a policy that actually fits your needs and budget.
So it's like having a translator who can break down all that complicated stuff. What other advice do they give?
Well, they also talked about the way insurance companies think. It's interesting because they actually want you to use certain services, like preventative care.
That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but it makes sense from a risk management perspective. Catching health issues early often means less expensive treatment down the line.
So if your insurance covers things like annual checkups or mammograms or other preventative screenings, you should definitely take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
You're not only taking care of your own health, but you're also helping to keep healthcare costs down.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
It is. But even with a good advisor and a solid insurance plan, things don't always go smoothly. You might have trouble getting a claim approved, Or the whole process might just feel confusing and frustrating.
Right, and that's where the video's advice about the Unidad de Atención Especializada a Clientes comes in, or UAE. It's a super helpful tool that a lot of people don't even know about.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So basically, every insurance company in Mexico has to have a UAE. This is a special unit that handles customer complaints.
Okay.
So if you feel like you're not getting good service or your claim is being unfairly denied, you can reach out to the UAE for help.
That's great to know. I had no idea. It's good to know there's a resource you can turn to if you run into problems with your insurance company. So we've covered a lot about emergency funds and medical insurance. What are some other key takeaways from the video that you think are important for our listeners?
Well, one of the big themes is being proactive with your finances. It's not enough to just set up these systems and forget about them. You have to keep checking your financial situation, adjust your strategies as needed, and stay informed to make smart decisions.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about constantly learning and improving.
Exactly.
What are some practical things people can do to start moving in the right direction?
One simple but powerful step is to regularly review your income and expenses. Track where your money's going each month. See if there are any areas where you could cut back or save more.
Right. Little adjustments here and there.
Exactly. Even small changes can add up over time.
Like they say, take care of the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. Those small adjustments to your spending habits can free up cash flow that you can then use for your financial goals.
Exactly. And remember, financial planning isn't one size fits all. Your needs and goals will change throughout your life. Getting married, having kids, buying a house, starting a business. These are all big life events that might require you to change your financial plan.
So be adaptable and stay informed. That's why I think these deep dives are so valuable. They give you the knowledge you need to feel confident about your financial journey.
Absolutely.
So speaking of valuable knowledge, the video ends on a really interesting question.
It does. It asks, now that you've learned these strategies, what aspect of your personal finances do you feel most inspired to tackle first?
That's such a good question. Is it finally setting up that emergency fund you've been putting off? Maybe it's taking a look at your investments and making sure they still fit your risk tolerance and goals. Or maybe it's finally getting that medical insurance plan to protect your health and your financial future.
It's all about taking that first step and starting to build momentum. Remember, personal finance isn't about being perfect. It's about making progress.
I love that. It's about making choices today that will set you up for a better tomorrow. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's go over the 3 key takeaways.
Okay, the first one is understanding interest rate changes, whether rates are going up or down. It's important to know how those changes might affect you, your savings, your investments, your loans. Knowing this will help you make informed decisions and adjust your financial strategies accordingly.
Second, we talked about building a smart emergency fund. It's your financial safety net, protecting you from surprises and helping you avoid debt. The video gave us 4 different methods for calculating your emergency fund needs, so you can pick the one that works best for you.
And finally, we discussed medical insurance. It's often overlooked, but it's absolutely crucial. It's not just about your health. It's about your financial security. Getting the right medical insurance plan can protect you from the financial fallout of a medical emergency. It lets you focus on getting better without the stress of huge medical bills.
Okay, so everyone listening, think about these 3 takeaways. Where do you stand with each one? What steps can you take today to make your financial foundation stronger?
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about personal finance, the more confident you'll feel. And as your life changes, so should your financial strategies. Stay curious, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask for help from trusted financial professionals.
That's great advice. It's a journey, not a destination. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into financial preparedness. Until next time, remember, your financial future is in your hands. Make it a bright one. It really is about giving yourself the tools and knowledge to make smart financial choices, ones that work for your goals and values. Speaking of goals, the video ends with this really interesting question.
It does. It asks, now that you've learned these strategies, what aspect of your personal finances do you feel most inspired to tackle first?
What a great question to think about. Is it building that emergency fund you've been putting off? Maybe it's checking your investments, making sure they're still right for you, your risk tolerance and your goals. Or maybe it's finally getting that medical insurance plan to protect your health and your finances.
It's all about starting somewhere, taking that first step, building that momentum. Personal finance, it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
I love that. Making choices today that will make for a better tomorrow. So before we wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly recap the 3 key takeaways.
Okay, so the first one is understanding those interest rate changes. Whether rates are going up or down, you need to know how those changes might affect you, your savings, investments, loans. Being aware of this helps you make good decisions and adjust your financial strategies accordingly.
The second takeaway was about building that smart emergency fund. It's your financial safety net, protecting you from the unexpected and keeping you out of debt. The video gave us 4 different ways to figure out how much you need in your emergency fund so you can choose what works best for you.
And last but not least, we talked about medical insurance. It's something a lot of people overlook. But it is so important. It's not just about your health, it's about your financial well-being too. Having the right medical insurance plan can protect you from those big medical bills if an emergency does happen. That way you can focus on getting better without the extra stress of money worries.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, think about these 3 key takeaways. Where do you stand with each one? What can you do today to improve your financial situation?
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about personal finance, the more confident you'll be. And remember, your financial needs will change over time, so stay curious, keep learning. And don't be afraid to reach out to a financial advisor if you need help.
Great advice. It's a journey, not a destination. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into financial preparedness. Until next time, remember, your financial future is in your hands. Make it a bright one. It really is about empowering yourself to make smart choices with your money. Choices that work for you and your goals and values. And speaking of goals, the video wraps up with this thought-provoking question.
Right. They ask, now that you've learned all these strategies, what part of your personal finances are you most excited to tackle first?
Such a good question. What is it for you? Is it finally getting that emergency fund going? The one you've been putting off? Or maybe it's time to look over those investments. Make sure they still make sense for you, your risk tolerance, your goals. Or maybe it's finally biting the bullet and getting that medical insurance plan to protect your health and your wallet down the line.
It's all about taking that first step, getting the ball rolling. And remember, personal finance isn't about being perfect. It's about progress.
That's such a good point. It's about making choices today that'll make tomorrow better. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's do a quick recap of those 3 key takeaways we talked about.
Okay, so number 1 was all about understanding interest rate changes. Whether those rates are going up or down, you got to know how they might affect you, your savings, your investments, your loans. Knowing this stuff helps you make smart choices and adjust your financial plan when you need to.
Number 2 was that emergency fund. It's your safety net, right? It protects you from those unexpected curveballs life throws at you and helps you stay out of debt. The video gave us 4 different ways to figure out how much to put in that emergency fund so you can pick what works best for your situation.
And lastly, we talked about medical insurance, something people often overlook, but it's so important, not just for your health, but for your financial well-being too. Having the right medical insurance protects you from those massive medical bills if you ever have an emergency. That way you can focus on getting better without the added stress of money worries.
It's all about peace of mind. So to everyone listening, think about those 3 key takeaways. Where do you stand with each one? What can you do today to make your financial situation even better?
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about personal finance, the more confident you'll be. And as your life changes, your financial strategies should too. So stay curious, keep learning, and never be afraid to reach out to a financial advisor if you need some guidance.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a journey, not a destination. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into financial preparedness. Until next time, remember, your financial future is in your hands. Make it a bright one.